This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here, and you're here on the Whole Horse Podcast. It's March 26th today, we're recording, and this is episode 51, past the 50 mark, which is very exciting. And I'm back with one of my favorite guests, and also one of yours. Sarah Schlote is here with me today, tuning in from Ontario. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey there, Alexa. How's it going?
Oh, it's good. It's good to be back with you and exploring some new terrain today.
Sure.
I've been sort of watching from a distance, as I always do, your work. And you had posted an article a little while back that caught my eye, and a lot of the times in the podcast, it's like my curiosity, and there's this hopefulness that other people are also interested in these things, which it seems to be the case so far.
Sure.
And so, yeah, thank you for coming and being willing to chat a little bit more about that article and the aspects and concepts you covered in there. Mm-hmm.
Sure. More happy to do it. And I really appreciate the invitation to do this right now in the midst of this weird pandemic situation.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a fan of the word social distancing, because I'm refusing to jump on that bandwagon. I'm calling it physical distancing.
Yeah.
You know, we are physical distancing, but socially we are reaching out, we're making connections, we're trying to communicate and, you know, have meaningful contact in spite of the difference in geography and the distance that we're having to maintain. So
absolutely.
This is a lovely way to maintain social connection in the midst of physical distancing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. You're welcome. I really like that distinction. And I think a lot of people out there will probably breathe a sigh of relief just having that clarified for them as well. Because I know for me the other day, I got on the phone with like 5 friends that I rarely talk to. I was like, whoa, look at me all social. Yeah, it was really, it's been in a way a gift to have the space and time. I know I've been recording a lot of podcasts and really enjoying, you know, conversations with people I haven't connected with in a long time. And we're all getting a little creative, you know? Yeah. I'm literally having a Zoom birthday dinner with my family on Sunday night.
Your birthday?
My birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, I'm turning 40 on Tuesday.
Oh my God, welcome to the club. I did in December. You're right behind me.
Yep. So, and I'm having a birthday dance party on Zoom as well.
Oh my goodness, that sounds so fun.
So yeah, I'm getting all that organized, and yeah, my family and I are all going to cook the same meal, or attempt to.
That is so fun.
So my 2 sisters, one in Comox and one in Vancouver, and my parents in Victoria, and me here in Cowichan. Yeah. So
a friend of mine in Vancouver Island, we did that about a year or 2 ago, way before this whole pandemic thing. And we decided to do recipes together at a distance in our own kitchens and then sort of post the results, you know, combined on social media.
Love it.
I think the last time we did it, we tried Hasselback potatoes and they both failed miserably.
I'm a little concerned, to be honest. Cooking is not my strong suit. My mom sent through the recipe and I was like, it has definitely more than 10 ingredients. I am not sure about this. So we'll see.
We will see.
But yes, exciting to be able to still creatively celebrate my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we
Meaningful
never,
connections don't have to occur in person. I think this
no.
is one of the advantages of technology, as much as it has been a scourge of our existence in some ways. In some ways, it's a bit of a blessing right now. It's one
Uh,
of those weird necessary evils used in moderation. And right now, it is a really good resource. So,
oh, big time. I feel
yeah.
like we should all be buying stocks in Zoom webinar right now. Which is what we're on recording, everybody,
Yes,
right
yes,
now.
yes.
Yeah. So, oh,
Mm.
awesome. Well, on that note, you also wrote this other article, and I know that we didn't talk a ton about this at the beginning, but you wrote an article about horse time from home.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of people are struggling right now with potentially their boarding facilities being shut down to public use, not being able to ride, just not being able to interact with their horses in the same way as normal. Do you have anything that you would suggest right now
Yeah,
for those
that's
folks that are like craving their horse fix and not getting it?
That's tough, and the article that you're referring to, we'll make sure we have the links,
Yeah,
the links of the
totally.
two articles posted on the site, so people can go and read them. The most recent one is this horse time from home idea, and I wrote it primarily with for the audience being people who practice equine-assisted,
Yes.
whatever you want to call it, right? Where clients can't get out to the farm for sessions because of the pandemic sort of directives, and so how can we as practitioners provide horse contact or access to
Yep.
horses without being able to have in-person contact. And so that was the original reason for the article. But I think in some ways, it can be used for people who are not in that industry, who are not in that world, who do have horses, who are being, are prevented from going to their boarding facility, or who are in quarantine, who are away on travel recently and are self-isolating for now, and can't get to the farm for whatever reason. Uh, to be able to bring a little bit of that contact back into them as a resource while they're waiting to have those restrictions lifted. Let me bear this in mind, that the article I wrote, and I'll just sort of give a props to Veronica Lack for spewing the conversation, because she had sent me a message. I said, hey, I think we're going to have to cancel sessions for the foreseeable future. We were kind of going back and forth
Mm-hmm.
about our respective practices. And I said, right now, my in-office sessions are by phone and video, and most of my clients have switched over. But I said, I don't think we're going to be able to do anything for the horse stuff. And she said, well, hey, I had a recent conversation with a lot of my students, and we were talking about creative ways of having, horse time in spite of the fact that we can't do live horse time. And I was super resistant to it at first. I'll tell you, like, she had sent me a bunch of WhatsApp texts saying, hey, have you thought of this? And I'm just like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. It's not the same. It's not the same. It sucks. This is like, consolation prize stuff. My clients are not going to pay me for an hour for me to sit there and talk to them about what I'm seeing with the horses in the herd while they sit in the background at home and can't see the horses. Like, there's
Right.
no way they're going to pay me money for that. And I was really resistant to the idea. And then as we talked about it more, I was like, but there are situations in which some of those ideas that I write about in that blog post could actually be really helpful. And where I could see it being really helpful is in terms of sensory grounding in the face of the difficulties, the anxiety, the panic that we're noticing on a global scale. People sort of really being in a nervous system state of, vigilance or even hypervigilance, depending on the individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some people who are struggling with mental health issues in general are really finding this time to be very challenging. People who have trauma, eating disorders, OCD, panic disorders, chronic
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, people who have experienced insecure attachment, who feel the isolation is really exacerbating their abandonment challenges,
Yep.
and so everyone who's sort of in the mental health area of difficulty, many people are really having a hard time right now. That's not everybody, of course, but there's people who have particular sensitivities right now who are finding this very, very challenging.
Yep.
And I would say it's especially true for people who have difficulty with what we call, whatchamacallit, object constancy. So object constancy is this idea that when I can't see you or I can't be with you, I still know and trust that our relationship is secure. I know that you still
Mm,
exist, even
yep.
though I cannot see you, right?
Yep.
The object from object relations theory is this idea that the object is the other. So I'm not talking about inanimate objects. I'm talking about
Yep.
whoever the other is, whether the other is a human being or a horse or a dog or a cat or your deceased grandparent or whoever the other happens to be is the object in object relations theory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when we have early developmental ruptures of certain kinds, if we didn't have the ability to develop a sense of safety in relationship, if we learn from a young age that people are not coming when I call, right? If I cry out for help and no
Mm-hmm.
one's coming, right?
Yep.
Then I don't know that either I exist, does if a tree falls alone in the forest, does it still make a sound, kind
Yep.
of idea,
Right.
right?
Yep.
That's
Totally.
object constancy, right? Is like, oh, does it still actually do the thing it does even if no one's around to hear it?
Yep.
And so people who have really challenged object constancy may be having an especially difficult time, which is where these suggestions I think are really helpful,
Mm.
because it's like, oh, as I'm in this place of social distancing, again, physical distancing, but having difficulty with this isolation sensation, how can I connect with a felt sense in my own body of a meaningful connection and trust that it still exists, even though I can't have physical connection or proximity
Mm.
to it? Because with
Mm-hmm.
insecure attachment, we seek proximity. And
Totally.
so, right, proximity seeking is a feature of attachment relationships. And so if I can't seek proximity to the individuals and animals that help me feel resourced and calm, you know, then that's going to affect people who have insecure attachment, much more difficultly, if I can invent a word, than individuals who have more secure or earned secure attachment. Not that it hasn't been hard for all of us, but if you happen to have unresolved insecure attachment, then this time, by which I mean anxious attachment and
Yep.
um, you know
Yep.
disorganized, not avoidant. I think the avoidantly attached folks are doing quite well.
Yeah, they're probably just having a great time. Maybe not a
As a
great
general
time,
rule, maybe
but
not a great time.
maybe not a
Yes.
great time, but they're yes, it's a different. I know being a typically sort of anxious moving towards secure attachment
Yes.
style,
Yeah.
that proximity. I mean, I think having my horses like right outside right now, and
Hmm.
that I watch them a lot right
Yeah.
now, and it's
Yeah.
very, it resources me a lot to have
Yeah.
that with
Yeah.
me right now. And I'm not really sure how I would experience not having them
Yeah.
in that proximity, right?
Yeah.
For me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people like myself, I'm one of those folks who, unfortunately, where we live, farms are brutally expensive, and we can't, so we board our horses.
Yeah.
And so unless we're at the farm, we don't have our horses in our yard, unfortunately. And so for individuals like myself, I have a decently earned secure attachment
Yeah.
style. I flip-flop between anxious or avoidant depending on who the person is, but
Yeah.
most of the time I'm more earned secure now. So this hasn't really affected me in the way that some people have been really
Yeah.
affected by this. Although I'm more extroverted and socially gregarious, I really fill my tank by being introverted. I'm more of an ambivert,
Yeah. Me too.
right?
Yeah.
Introverts and ambiverts are coping relatively okay
Yeah.
compared to those who are more socially driven. And so for those folks who are really finding this time very challenging, some of the suggestions I make on my blog post may actually be really helpful, especially if object constancy is difficult. And
Yep.
and it may even still be difficult for those who do have compromised object constancy. So one of the suggestions in question was, if you have an object that smells like your horse, right?
Mm.
So again, this is meant for, again, for practitioners and clients. If a practitioner has access to the horses, rubbing something onto the horse, of course with the horse's willingness and consent, assuming that is obviously in place, rubbing a piece of fabric or a bandana or something, a clean one, thank you everybody,
Yep. Totally.
on the horse. We're still in pandemic land, we still got to be careful, right? So rubbing a clean piece of fabric on the horse with the horse's consent, and then putting that in a bag and then mailing it off within a few days. If there's any virus on it, the stuff only lasts in surfaces for a few days,
Yep.
right? So you can put stuff in the mail, it should be okay. fingers crossed. I'm not an expert in
Yep.
epidemiology, but this is just based on what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And so if you have something that smells of your horse, and let's say you're not a person who works with clients, but you've got something in your garage, you've got their old
I was
winter
going to say,
blanket,
like, you got
you
that
know?
old pair of polo wraps that are just, you forgot to
Yeah.
put in the washing machine or something. Yeah.
Well, this is it, right? And this is where we talk about transitional objects. So
Right.
Winnicott talks about transitional objects, and sometimes this is like the security blanket of yore when we were little children, right?
Yep.
And or something that smells like your mom, right? Or if
Yep.
you're in an adult relationship and you're going to be away from your partner, you get a t-shirt they wore
Yep.
recently that still smells
Totally.
like their perfume or their cologne, and then you kind of smell that, and something feels calmer inside.
Yep.
We can judge that, right? Sometimes we have these internal critics that judge when we need stuff like that, but we have a biological imperative for social connection. We are mammals, right? We do require a sense of connection to co-regulate with one another,
Mm.
right? It's not wrong to want that. It's not babyish to want that. It's not get over it, suck it up. And if that's the response to the idea of, well, go and get your polo wraps or go and get your blanket from your horse from last winter that you never got washed,
Yes, right.
and like shove your face in it and breathe deeply for a few moments, and
Mm-hmm.
just really see what happens in your body as you connect with the smell,
Yeah.
of your horse or horses or barn or whatever, right? And you just allow your nervous system, that's going to connect with the parts of the brain, right, that are involved in memory. And memory is really, really sensory.
Yeah.
Right? Smell is hugely important to accessing memory. And
Mm.
so being able to just smell that scent and then breathe and track what happens in your body and
Mm-hmm.
notice what happens. Now, different people might have a different reaction to that.
I'm imagining it could be emotional.
It could be super emotional. There could be grief. There could be tears. There could be sadness. That could happen. It could also be really regulating. It could
Mm-hmm.
be very deeply reassuring and relieving to smell that familiar smell.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is going to depend on your individual history of attachment, your individual, challenges with regards to object constancy, your own particular grief and loss patterns,
Yep.
where you're at in this, what you're carrying in your nervous system, the other life difficulties and adversities that you're having to navigate at this time, right? Like, so everyone's going to have a different response to something as simple as smell your horse's smell off an object from your garage.
Yeah. Right.
It sounds like a really simple activity, but really deep down, it might actually bring up a lot for people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Like, that's really normal, right? Just because you're feeling tears of sadness doesn't mean that you're necessarily overwhelmed,
Yep.
right? You can tell if you're getting overwhelmed if after you smelled your polo wraps, you have to go inside the house and binge eat on booze and chocolate,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go, okay, well, maybe that was not the right thing to be doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because it sent you into a place of so much deep turmoil that you dysregulated and needed
Yeah.
to find something else to
Yep.
get you to calm down.
Yeah.
That would probably be an indicator to maybe not do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I might suggest to folks who are thinking about some of the activities on the blog posts that I shared around horse time from home, is just before you even try any of the activities, think about them first.
Yeah.
Right?
And what
If you think,
happens? Yeah.
yeah, what happens in your nervous system, your body, your feelings, what sensations do you become aware of, what
Yeah.
starts to rise in your, and then track through that. What I mean by tracking is follow what happens in your body in response to that idea. That will be the anticipatory response to the activity,
Right. Yeah.
right? And to me, the anticipatory response is always the first step before doing the thing.
Yeah.
Right? We often forget that that's the initial step. Is how do you build your window of tolerance to doing something? Is, well, think about doing it first and be with that first before you even do the thing. And if even just the thought of it makes you dissociate or makes you go into, a complete meltdown of your feelings, then maybe that's all you need to be doing right now, is
Yeah.
just pausing and
Totally.
grounding yourself through other methods.
Yeah.
Right? And then, you might check in a little bit later, but we talked, I think, in the past about pendulation. Pendulation is activation and deactivation of
Mm-hmm.
the nervous system. That would be what Peter Levine calls one pendulation: rise and fall, right?
Yeah.
Or fall and then rise, right?
Yeah.
If it really goes into shutdown and then comes back into aliveness, that would
Yeah.
be another pendulation. And so if you're able to track through the rise and fall of charge and discharge, or activation, deactivation, or arousal and settling in anticipation of trying one of the things in that list, and you're able to track through that little bell of activation, deactivation, and you're okay, then absolutely feel free to go ahead and try some of the things there, right? Because what you've just done is you've just grown your window of tolerance a little bit more by riding through the arousal and the settling associated with thinking of something that might be a resource. Because what's really, really interesting is people who have a history of good things not being allowed, people who have a history of neglect, people who have a history of trauma where they were told, no, you can't have that, right? Or they were abused a lot, or they didn't receive love and connection. A lot of people have learned to shut down the idea of goodness.
Oh yeah, for
and not
sure.
give themselves permission to have goodness. And so even thinking about smelling their polo wraps, might actually put them in contact with a lot of resistance.
Yep.
Right. And a sense of, well, no, I don't want that. Why should I do that? That's a stupid idea. And the stupid idea criticism, maybe a self-protective response, because what if I actually end up enjoying that? And then I come into contact with all my childhood pain around the fact that the things that I really wanted and needed, I couldn't have.
Yep.
And I cannot bear, there's a part of me, maybe not the grown-up part of me, but a child part of me cannot bear to tolerate allowing myself to have this piece of goodness in the face of losing it. Because what if I get sick? What if I die? What if my horse gets sick?
Right.
What if I can never go see my horse ever again?
Yep.
And the thought of that, to that little kid part inside of us that learned a long time ago that good stuff is not coming, or not to put your faith in good stuff.
Totally. Or it gets taken away. Good stuff gets taken away.
Right. So I'm going to get disappointed. And there's this kid part that is crushed by that. And then, so if your reaction is, well, this is a dumb idea, I go, wow. So that tells me that there's something inside that's trying to protect you from the possibility of this idea.
Yeah.
And not to be angry with that response internally, not to be upset with that response, but just to be really kind and gentle with that response and go, wow, okay, there's a part of me right now that's really not liking this idea. I may or may not know what that's about, but I'm going to say thank you to that response for trying to keep me safe.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So on that blog post, Alexa, I know you're going to share it with the listeners.
I'll
There's
share
a
it.
ton of cool ideas. Some of them are meant more for therapists, I will be honest. So at the beginning of the article, it says, know your scope of practice, know your limit, play within it, to quote, the gambling people, right?
Yeah.
So definitely know your limit. If you see anything on it that's interesting, feel free to try it. There's some stuff on there that a lot of people will be able to do no problems.
Yeah. Totally.
And sometimes the simplest activity will bring up stuff for folks and it'll be very surprising. So it's really important during this challenging time to expect unexpected responses and to be willing to track through those. And to take the time we need and not be angry at ourselves for having what seems to be a really big reaction to maybe something what seems really small.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, if you judge yourself for having a big reaction to something that seems really small, then that too may be self-protective.
I like that way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Because the inner critic is really what, right? It's a part of ourselves that we developed a long time ago to keep ourselves in line, to prevent us from doing something that will get us to lose even more connection and love and affection. And, and so I'm going to critique myself because it hurts way less to critique myself and be hard on myself than to hear it from someone else.
Totally.
Right. So if there's a part of you that goes, oh my God, I had this big reaction to just the idea of smelling my horse's polo wraps, and God, what's wrong with me? And that's so stupid. Then being kind with that voice of criticism is like, hey, there's a little kid part in there that learned a long time ago to use criticism as a self-protective mechanism. And that part is coming in real strong right now. And often those parts of ourselves are really triggered in extenuating circumstances. That's really normal.
Absolutely.
If that comes up right now. Yeah. So that is a little bit about horse time from home. It can also be something as simple as watching a video that you might have recorded of your horse, on your cell phone, and then trying as best as you can to fully immerse yourself in the sensory experience of that moment.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So you know how there's all these apps, right? There's all these apps that we download and sometimes we pay for them and they've got nature sounds and
Yep.
nature meditations and we
Totally.
pay money for this stuff. Guaranteed a lot of us have on our cell phones, you know, audio or video tracks of our horses chewing grass or our horses running around
Totally.
or, you know, and can you use that as a real
Mm.
free meditation, mindfulness, present moment focus? What's it like when you hear them chewing? What's it like when you hear them moving
Mhm.
around and they're breathing, and what happens in your body when you notice them breathing and chewing?
Mm.
And you hear the wind and the birds singing, and what happens in your system as you place yourself in that video.
Yeah.
Right?
Beautiful. I've even been noticing that. Like I've been watching some wild horse videos and
Yeah.
just like watching the horses run and hearing their
Yeah.
hooves and seeing like their manes move, and like
Yeah.
there's just something, I think as horse lovers, that we just can't help but regulate to that, and that freedom and that, yeah, yeah.
But I'll
So,
encourage this piece too. I just thought of this as we're
mhm,
speaking.
mhm.
Being a verbal processor, but an introverted energy restorer is kind of an interesting thing for me. I talk my way into my answers sometimes. As we're talking about this, I just realized what I'm asking people to do in this idea of watching these videos, whether it's of horses on your own phone or going on YouTube and finding horses, or there's a lot of really cool Facebook pages that talk about wild horses and show videos. Skydog Ranch is a really cool
Oh
one that I'm
yeah, that was
really.
the one that I
Oh, I've
saw.
been loving Skydog Ranch. If you want to go watch Skydog Ranch, they rescue Mustangs from the
Yeah,
BLM roundups, and
yeah,
they've recently been doing such beautiful work on actually rescuing members of a particular band that were
yeah.
rounded up and separated and spread out to different holding facilities, and they managed to find the stallion, all the mares, and one or two of the babies, and they brought them all back together to this sanctuary, and the band reunited on this wild sanctuary, and it's just so heartwarming. And so moments of reconnection in the midst of
Mm,
this pandemic, definitely go watch Skydog. um, it's either
yeah.
Skydog Ranch or Skydog
I think it's
Sanctuary.
Skydog Sanctuary.
Okay,
I
one of
think
the
it's what it is. Yeah. But
yeah,
even like hearing that, I'm like getting goosebumps,
I
and
know,
you
same.
can see my eyes are like welling a little bit.
They are. I just got goosebumps too. And because you know how they say people who are losing one or their sensory input options, the other ones become more honed,
Yes,
right? So right now, a lot of us don't have access to tactile,
totally.
right? And so in the absence of tactile, now is a really good time to hone and we don't have access to scent either. I mean,
No.
unless you got the polo wraps in the garage, you know, we don't have the ability to smell our horses unless you connect with the felt sense memory. And
Yep.
then even then you're having to access recall.
Yep.
And so as you're watching these videos, see if you can use your eyesight and your hearing
Yep.
and hone those in the absence of being able to touch
Yep.
and smell, right?
Mm.
Because although touch and smell are hugely, hugely evocative and regulating, there's still going to be some pieces that we can get through the visual and through the auditory.
Yep. Beautiful. And what I tend to teach in like my animal communication stuff is like really starting to work with the level of the subtle senses,
Yeah.
remembering, oh, what did it feel like to touch my horse, or
Yeah.
what do they
Some
smell like, or
yes.
yeah,
Yes. And people with object constancy difficulties may have difficulty with that.
I'm sure they will.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so for like somebody like myself, I can close my eyes or even keep my eyes open, think about the last time I was with my horse,
Yeah.
and I can, by using my subtle awareness, I can connect with how I was feeling in my body. I can smell the smell of the hay and the smell of my horse. I can sort of remember the tactile sense of his shaggy winter coat. You know, I will groom my mare, and when I pick out her udder, I can still feel the warmth of her udder in my hand,
Mm, I
right?
thought you were going to say the crusty bits.
Oh, that's so the picking part of me that really likes to remove stuff.
They're so similar.
Oh my gosh,
I am such a picker.
oh my God, same.
Oh
Yeah. So
God.
she thankfully my mare loves
Oh
that I
yeah,
pick
Deva
her
too.
udder. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Ruby
Yeah.
loves it. She just stands there and her lip hangs, and she just
Yep.
loves that I remove all the cruddy cruds.
Completely. I generally like I shed her out like with my hands because I just love
Yeah.
picking like hair out. So weird. It's so
It's okay. We all have a thing,
we
Alexa. It's
all
all
have a
good.
thing. We
And
all
I
have a
think I
thing.
think the picking thing, again, in moderation, right? For me,
Yes.
picking was a stress response. A lot of people have, I don't pull my hair out. Some people pull their hair out. Some
Yep.
animals pull their hair out, right? And so some of you out there, listeners, are going to be able to think the last time, right? If you can
Yeah.
recall a memory of a
Totally.
time where you felt a sense of calm or aliveness or beauty or joy, and if it's with your horses, all the better, because hey, this
Yeah.
is, a
Totally.
whole horse podcast. But if you can remember or recall a time where you were with your horse and you felt a sense of connection, and you really felt attuned to your horse, and you felt your horse was attuned to you, like you were feeling, felt, and getting gotten.
Yep.
And then as you recall that memory, what do you notice happens in your body? What happens in your physical
Mm.
sensations? What starts to shift? Right? What happens in your emotions? What plays out in the visual of the mental image? Right? What happens next as you're paying attention? Right? And Alexa, I just saw that you
Oh
yawned.
yeah, like as soon as you
Right?
said that, I was thinking of riding
Yeah.
Deva. I rode
Yeah.
actually the other day and it was just like such a beautiful ride. I was like in the midst of feeling like her trot and we were down by
Yeah.
the lake and so
Yeah.
the sun was shining and the birds were chirping and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really beautiful moment. So yeah, I could definitely feel that. And I started yawning right away.
Yeah, that's it. And what do you notice
Mm.
happens in your body as you're doing that, Alexa? So there's the yawning, you're picturing the scene,
Yeah,
and what
there's
happens physically?
relaxation. Like I can feel my shoulders kind of
Yeah,
melt a little bit,
a little
and
bit.
yeah, like just this sense of everything relaxing more and being in that. I can almost feel the warmth of it too, which is so interesting.
The warmth of it.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And
hmm
notice what you can sense through your hands. You said you're through your legs. You said you were riding
I was
Diva.
riding. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And
Yeah.
and what do you notice happens in your limbs as you're connecting with that memory?
Yeah, well, it's definitely, I can feel my hands on because I have mohair McCarty reins, so there's like
Mm.
a little bit of texture in the reins and a little bit of an aliveness. I can feel that
Mm.
in my hands, and then I ride in a fit saddle, like um, what is it? Not fleece, like a wool, like a wool riding pad. So there's always like this little bit of texture.
Mm.
And I
Yeah,
can really feel Diva when I ride in that. I just love
yeah.
for me being kinesthetic. I don't know what it is, but riding
Mhm.
as close as possible to my horse is has been a thing for me for a really long time. I just without digging my seat bones in. So I have this very fancy bareback pad. But yeah, I can sense that. And we've been playing with me using my upper leg a little bit more so I can kind of sense the activation and the release of my lower leg and the activation a little bit more, the aiding in my upper leg. So
And your
yeah,
face as you're talking about this, Alexa, I mean, you and I right now have the advantage of video too,
yeah,
but the listeners will just have the listening. But right now, since I can see you on video, your face lights up.
totally.
Like, so if you connect with what's happening behind your face as you're picturing what's
Hmm
happening with Diva in your memory, just notice what happens sensation wise in behind your eyes,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
can feel that.
what's happening there right now with
Well,
you?
if I was to put an emotion to it, I mean, Diva and I have been together for so long. There's
Mhm.
this real sense of familiarity and love
Mm.
between us. And so
Yeah.
when I'm with her, I get a real experience of connection in those moments. And so that, yeah, like it brings up emotion, like a
So right
real,
now it does bring up
yeah,
emotion. Yeah.
a little,
And
yeah,
yeah. What
gratitude and like, yeah.
so
Mm.
if you hang out with the gratitude, Alexa, just to see what happens next in your body. So there's the thinking about the memory, and then there's just being with the actual
Mm.
felt sense right now as you're connecting with the memory. See if you can hold the awareness of the two and
Mm-hmm.
notice physically what happens as you connect with gratitude right now.
It's just this really cool sensation. I would almost describe it like it's really funny. I'm really warm, first of
Uh-huh.
all.
Yeah.
And it's almost like my heart is like pumping, not faster or not in a stressful way, just like
Yeah.
in a sense like yeah, things are moving in my system. I can really
Right.
feel my whole body.
You could feel, yeah. So
Hmm.
that sense of things moving in your
Yeah.
system, I might call that aliveness.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
hang out with the aliveness, just notice what else you become aware of, Alexa, as we're really kind of milking this for what it's worth, right? It's like,
Hmm.
so here's the thing with accessing horse time from home, right? Is it's like having a really good meal and you really want to savor it. So you don't just
Mm.
plow through the meal. This is like mindful eating practice, right?
Yes.
So if the longer you hang out with this memory of you and Deva, just notice what
Mm.
continues to happen in your physicality. Like, so there's this thing, there's this warmth, there's your heart feeling strong, there's an
Mhm.
aliveness, like a pulsing.
Mhm.
Notice what else you become aware of as you're connecting with this felt sense
Mm.
as you picture her.
Yeah, and I really notice, I mean, she is already close here, so it would
Yeah,
be maybe different if she was further away, but I think
sure.
she's like right out the window. But a sense of closeness, a sense of real caring, like
Hmm.
for her,
Hmm.
and of that experience.
Hmm.
There's definitely a sense, like I have a feeling like I want to do that again.
So there's an eagerness.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
right.
can you notice the eagerness inside and see what
Mhm.
it's like as you hang out with the eagerness? Yeah.
Mhm.
Where do you notice eagerness inside your body or like wanting?
That's kind of lower, like I've noticed that more
Yeah.
solar plexus
Okay.
or lower in my abdomen. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting. I've just been reading about this, so I'm super fascinated that you're bringing this up. I'm reading about the brain centers involved in eagerness and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And what's been really interesting is this with all this time, I've been finding myself wanting to ride more. And
Hmm.
Deva and I haven't, we've ridden a little bit, but over the winter we tend to be very fair weather. And so it's
Hmm.
this sense of like, oh, I want to do more of that.
Uh-huh.
I can only imagine for people that are out there not being able to ride that there's definitely a growing eagerness to
Yeah.
be with their horses in different ways.
And this
Hmm.
is where I will say, because you're kind of going through this little activity that we're doing really
Yeah.
well and really easily. For some people who are listening in right now, even just connecting with the longing
Yeah.
or the wanting will be very challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Feeling a sense of longing or wanting sometimes puts people in touch with some of those earlier experiences of not getting one's needs met
Yeah.
or feeling like no one's coming or feeling really isolated and alone,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm wanting to just name that as a caveat that,
Mm,
as we're hanging out with this idea of, hey, can you remember a memory,
yeah.
of a time that you really loved with your horses? That it's interesting how a resource can become very quickly quite activating or
Oh,
a source of
yeah.
trauma or a source of pain, when it's actually intended to be a resource. So that actually is the case for any of you listening right now. That's
Yeah.
actually quite normal. And that's not that you've done anything wrong. It's not that the activity doesn't work. It's just that there's what we call an overcoupling, right? The
Yes.
thing that should be a resource and normally would be a resource is tied in with a whole bunch of other stuff right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like classical conditioning, as we, the bell and the salivation, right? And the food, and these things become overcoupled or over associated so that
Totally.
whenever we connect with the one thing, the other thing automatically shows up.
Mhm.
Right. So overcoupling is this idea that, oh, okay, as I think of this resource, I'm actually not feeling resourced, I'm feeling more upset. And that can happen for some people, especially during this difficult time. And so should
Mhm.
that happen for you, that's where it's really important to be able to have other ways of grounding yourself that aren't about necessarily recalling a sense of connection,
Yeah.
but about you connecting with yourself. Because here's what's interesting is often where we get triggered when we try to feel a sense of connection with a resource like our horse that we can't get to. If that brings up early neglect or early lack of resource or connection from our earlier lives,
Mhm.
what that speaks to a little bit for me is, do I have connection with my grown-up self today?
Mhm.
That when I'm feeling a sense of connection with my horse or trying to remember that, and I'm coming into contact with all my attachment trauma, and the fact that a resource is actually
Mm.
not a resource right now, then that often tells me that if I'm getting plunged into the depths of that trauma or that hurt or that pain, that tells me that there's a perhaps a lack of a connection with oneself,
Yep.
a lack of connection with core self or adult self or whatever you want to call it in the present moment, that the adult self can come in and scoop up that part of you that's feeling really
Mhm.
upset and say, hey, kiddo, I get it. This is really hard. And there's a
Mhm.
part of you that is, in remembering your horse right now, is being plunged into something else. And I want to let you know that you don't have to face that alone anymore. I'm
Mhm.
here with you.
Mhm.
Right? Because a lot of people right now in this pandemic who are facing what we're calling unfairly social distancing, but will feel social distancing for people,
Yep.
is
Totally.
realizing, oh, I don't have connection with other. And that's actually more triggering for people who also don't have connection with self.
Yep.
And
Yes.
so that's where the people who are really struggling now, not that it's not difficult for everybody, but people who are especially impacted is the people who are lacking connection within themselves, a
Mhm.
trusted connection with their own ability to self-soothe and honor and validate their own internal experience from the inside,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, I have to ask, I'm sure that you've seen a bit of an influx of people like coming for sessions and things. I've heard that, lots of people seeking
Mm-hmm.
some resourcing outside of themselves, which I think is really important.
And it
Yeah.
is, and what's tricky is that if we didn't have consistent resources on the outside, then
Yeah.
often in childhood, then we often continue to look for those resources on the outside as adults. And it's not
Right.
that it's wrong. Again, that I'm sort of contradicting myself from earlier, where I said it's really normal to co-regulate and want to be in connected
Oh yeah,
relationships, right?
totally.
That's very normal. But the sometimes the big distress for people who have insecure attachment, who lack an internal self,
Yeah.
cohesive internal adult core self, when we all have one, it's just a question of finding it,
Yeah.
right? And reconnecting with that. But if we don't have that, then we're especially affected by this more so. And so we can
Mm.
often end up turning to other external sources of soothing, like alcohol, binge eating,
Yep.
Netflix watching, etc.,
Gaming. Yeah. Mhm.
gaming, etc., right? Because it's like, oh, okay, I'm not receiving the resourcing from others, the objects in
Yes.
my life, object constancy again. If the objects, as in the other individuals or organisms, are not available, then I'm going to turn to something else on the outside to
Yep.
regulate myself
Yep.
as a replacement for co-regulation,
Mm.
right? Which is where addictions come into play, which is where obsessive compulsive behaviors come into play. These are all attempts at regulation when when we're little, the external co-regulators are not available, or
Yep.
as when we're grown-ups, we lack that ability internally to have connection with ourselves to
Mhm.
support that internal regulation first. Not that, again, as adults we don't need co-regulation in relationships. We do. We
Yeah.
fare better when we have
Definitely.
it.
Yeah.
But we can also get through this a little bit more easily if we have a really good internal sense of adult self available that we can turn to,
Mm.
also to help the distressed parts of us when we start to feel activated.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's not either or, it's kind of both.
Yeah, for
Mhm,
sure. And
mhm.
I mean, I see right now, and it's so funny because when me and Sarah started this podcast today, we were like, we're going to talk about this other article, and here we've got. We might need to do two podcasts,
We
Sarah.
may. That's okay. I'm happy to come
Yeah.
back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are like, I'm on Spotify and iTunes and are really wanting to look up Sarah's the link for Sarah's article, just go to wholehorse.ca and all the resources will be there. So
Mm.
wholehorse.ca/episode 51. And you'll find all of these links and stuff. And Sarah always has some amazing things to share. So it's worth going and checking that out. Yeah. And Sarah, I think this is like the best possible place we could have gone today. I think it's
I think
so,
so.
so relevant
Yeah.
right now for, how a lot of people, um, are feeling and gosh, it's entirely unprecedented.
Yeah.
And I think when we're in
Yeah.
unprecedented places, and I would love to hear, your thoughts on this, but, when we're in, I know that was really something that I struggled with for a few days, was sort of this, my system going, we've never done this before. What do we
Mhm.
do? Like,
Mhm.
how do I manage with this?
Yeah.
There was definitely some shaky um places, even like to the point of getting upset with a few people, and like, oh, like, isn't hygienic enough. That's like not who I am at all, but just these growing pains of how to navigate a very unprecedented scenario right at this moment, and yeah, that extending out to our access to our barns, and in some countries, people being asked to not ride their horses, and you know
Mhm.
very unprecedented.
It is extremely very unprecedented. And if we, in this sort of state of sort of global mass panic, a lot of us are feeling that, there's this herd co-dysregulation
Yeah.
occurring a little bit globally, right? Where, in some ways we're trying to, those of us who are very nervous system aware, we're doing our best to really resource ourselves and come into connection and co-regulation so that we're mitigating against the effects of sort of this sort of mass panic that's happening.
Mhm.
And it's really, really especially important to acknowledge that, hey, these are difficult times, these are unprecedented times. Has humanity faced pandemics in the past? Yes. We've never come together, I think, to the same degree in terms of global shutdowns happening.
Yeah.
And I think in a weird way, we've also never been able to go through a pandemic with this degree of connectivity. In the past, in distant history, when we've had epidemics and pandemics in the past, we didn't have social media to maintain connection. We didn't have telephones. We didn't have WhatsApp and Zoom and all these different platforms that allow us to maintain a sense of connectedness with each other. We didn't have that. You know, Again, it's no substitute for the real thing, but my goodness, when we can connect even through auditory or through video, and we can hear each other breathing and just spend a few moments just breathing with each other,
Mhm.
right? And holding awareness on our own bodies. There's a group of colleagues of mine, I missed the first call, but a group of colleagues of mine, about 300 people, were in on a call recently.
Oh my
And these were
gosh.
all, yeah, these were all somatic practitioners from various places around the world who do somatic experiencing, and various other forms of related work. And I was told about this, I missed this call, I was so sad I missed it, but they did a group practice where they collectively held attention on their kidney adrenals, on their brain stem.
Yep.
These are the parts of the body that are involved in our threat
Mhm.
responses,
Mhm.
right? And on ankles.
Yep.
And collectively, for the period of this sort of webinar, 300 people were collectively holding
Mm.
awareness on kidney adrenals, where we have noradrenaline and adrenaline and all of our stress responses, brain stem, which is part of those sort of really base, these sort of fear responses,
Yep.
and things going on there, and the ankles, which proprioceptively is
Yep.
a very grounding kind of place to be
Totally.
held. And just the resourcing that came from connecting with each other in a virtual call, but everyone together co-regulating by bringing
Mhm.
awareness to these parts of our bodies that are holding stress, for collective grounding and collective resourcing, I thought was really, really brilliant. And
Yeah.
so what I will do is, along with some of the articles that you're going to share, Alexa, on the
Yep.
links on your website, I will send a few other resources related to self holds,
Yes.
right?
That would
Self
be
holds for
great.
self-regulation. And also today we talked a little bit of we did some, so for those of you who are interested in some of the methods I talked about today, I did a little bit of somatic experiencing.
Yep.
So this idea of tracking the body, what's happening in the
Yep.
nervous system, what happens if you hang out with that, um, what happens next, those kinds of things, pendulation, that all comes out of somatic experiencing, if that's of interest to you. But I also did a little bit of what we call parts work, right? So this idea of working with parts of the self. And I've got some
Mm.
really lovely resources I will share with your listeners on, for those of you who are interested in more parts based resourcing, and how to connect with the adult self or the core self in the midst of these difficult times, to help
Mhm.
bring reassurance and regulation to the parts of us that are perhaps younger, that are panicking right now. that will be helpful. So I will send some resources along for that. And then there's this other thing as well around neuroception.
Mhm.
How do we create a neuroception of safety? When our nervous systems are perceiving danger or life threat, it is really normal to not be at our best. So when I heard you say, Alexa, a few moments ago about getting really kind of annoyed about hygiene and stuff, and that's normally not how you are, that's part of a fear response, right? That's part
Mhm.
of a I feel in
Totally.
danger response, right? One of my things that I've learned to work on over the years has been my tendency to be very, very fastidious and a rule follower. We may have actually talked about that in a previous podcast. I'm not sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
If not, it was perhaps a personal conversation between you and
Yep.
I, where I might have disclosed my inner rule follower, and
Oh,
that's how
I have a very strong inner rule follower
you
as
do as
well.
well.
Yeah,
Okay.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
think it, but I definitely do. Like I get super nervous if like a
Yeah.
traffic rule has been, like I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you have to no, this is the way.
I know. I have to follow the rules, and I get in trouble when I don't. How come you don't get in trouble when you don't follow the rules? That's
Completely.
not fair. I know. My little kid parts get kind of.
Oh
It's
yeah.
funny. It's funny the
Yeah,
ways we've coped, right? And
totally.
if you have an inner rule follower, you may notice your inner rule follower getting really pissed off at people these days for not obeying the rules, right?
Totally.
Because you're putting us at risk, and that's a fear response. So if you find yourself being judgmental or angry or overly rule followy or getting into panic, recognize that there's a part of you on the inside that's feeling activated right now. Recognize that beneath the behavior that you're noticing in yourself, there is a nervous system pattern that's playing out,
Mhm.
right? There is a nervous system response of fear or threat, right? Where you may feel yourself a little bit activated in terms of fight or flight, right? Flight is I'm going to distance the heck out of here. Fight is why the F are you not doing the right thing, right? I
Yes.
caught my F bomb on your podcast.
Well done.
Thank you. I figured, I don't know who the audience is. I'm usually not, I don't have any problems with swearing, but it's a podcast. So, but if you find yourself, your little fight response is getting a little activated, your rule follower is getting a little bit more harsh,
Mhm.
your inner judgmental, inner critic is getting a little bit more, strong and loud these days. All this is evidence of the
Yep.
management strategies that we are doing to try to connect and try to feel safer and try to bring that activation of unsafety down in our bodies.
Yeah.
So see if you can catch your behavior and then come back into noticing what's happening inside, track the sensations, find ways of resourcing. I'll send some other resources that can help with
Mhm.
that from multiple perspectives. So the somatic stuff, the part stuff, there's some really cool resources out there that can help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. That would
Hmm.
be great. And you did talk a little bit about attachment theory, and I think I'm fairly certain we've talked about that a chunk in past podcasts. So
We may very well. Yeah.
definitely track back, everybody. I've done, I think, 3 other podcasts with Sarah, 2 other podcasts, and then right, Whole Horse Apprenticeship
That's right.
um
That was the third thing we've
webinar.
done
Yeah,
together.
okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
So 2 other podcasts with Sarah. So definitely go and have a listen. It will give you some foundational pieces for what we've gone through today.
Hmm.
A bit more of a sense of the attachment work and what that's about as well. I found it profoundly helpful in my life to understand my attachment styles and how they impact how I respond to things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. We are all feeling it right now.
Oh
We're
yeah.
all not at our best. Our responses are coming out in full force. It's all meant to be self-protective, and that time to slow down, pause, hold yourself. The self holds can be really, really helpful,
Yeah.
whether you do them with a colleague or just by yourself. you know
Yeah.
if you're able to get out to your horses, great. If not, if you're watching a video of your horse, have a hand on your chest, a hand on your belly, and then just
Mm,
notice what happens. And I'll send some instructions on self-hold activities. There's some really great websites out there that have got that all written out. A colleague of mine in the
Fantastic.
US, Heidi Hansen, who wrote the Art of Healing Trauma blog, fabulous blog. For those of you who don't know Heidi, she's a person who has been trauma affected in her own life and illustrates her own blog, and her posts are fantastic. And she's basically taken different therapeutic activities from
Mm.
various types of therapies and basically illustrated them all and written out all the instructions. And she's got a lot of really great free articles. And she's also made a coloring book for trauma survivors that you can order on Amazon.
Wow, very
Yeah,
cool.
she's a very cool
Okay.
individual. So feel free to, I'll make sure that I include some of the links on some of her self-hold activities
Yep.
for self-regulation
Yep. Yep.
during this time. And yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine for so many people that, especially with complex trauma and things where things are
Mm-hmm.
being very activated at this moment. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really, really appreciate us navigating and like heading into this territory, even though this is not where we were thinking we were going
No,
today.
not at all. Horse time from home. This is all still horse time from home because, right? Because
Because it's relevant.
it is relevant and it's important. So go check out the Horse Time from Home blog
Yep,
post that I wrote. Check out the different activities, see what it's like, see how your system responds to the different
totally,
activities, right?
totally. Yep,
If you've got a friend who does have horses and you're able to watch horses live stream with your friend at their property,
completely.
take the time,
FaceTime,
FaceTime.
you
Yeah.
got it.
Get the
Absolutely.
get your horse time in and use that as an opportunity for mindful awareness. So another resource that actually just came to mind, Carolyn Resnick on her
Oh,
website
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
has that 31 days of mindfulness meditation with your horses.
Oh, fantastic.
And so for those of you who cannot get out there every day to see your horses
Yep,
because either you don't own horses or it's your therapist who has horses or you're a life coach who has horses or you're in quarantine or you're at a boarding facility and you can't go to your own horses, it might be really cool to go through the 31 days, do the practice while doing it with a buddy who is able to
yep,
have access to horses,
yep.
and you both commit to doing the activity together.
I
Right.
like
So there's
that.
another option right there. I'm going to update the blog post and include that in there.
Fantastic.
You could do that,
Yeah,
or do it by watching horse videos on YouTube.
totally.
There's lots of channels.
Maybe I need
Lots
to
of
start just
videos.
videoing my herd.
Honestly, Alexa, there's a market. Start videoing the
Right?
herd.
Videoing the herd, doing their thing,
Yeah.
just getting up real close, the chewing. I love the chewing. So, yeah.
On my EQUUSOMA YouTube channel, I don't have a lot of videos. I have been a little behind in posting videos on there, but I do have 2 or 3 videos that are just co-regulating in nature of
Mm,
our mare Ruby and her sleeping and breathing along with her breathing while she's sleeping, and you can hear the wind.
beautiful.
And so feel free to go have that a look. It's only a
Okay.
few minutes, but click repeat.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So great. So many
Hmm.
great resources. And another thing that I'm offering up is um, group remote sessions on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
So
Lovely.
yeah,
Lovely.
I'm going to have just listen to the end of the podcast here. I'm going to have a little bit more information on that when
Great.
we finish up. But
Cool.
that is a really great chance to come and breathe with us and get
Mhm.
some good stuff. Yeah, on a Wednesday morning until we're high and dry out of this
Yeah.
time. I'll be doing those. So yeah,
Great. That's
yeah,
wonderful, Alexa. Thank you for doing that.
yeah. Of course. Thank you for all you're
Mhm.
doing too, Sarah. Really
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll reconvene another time to talk about 3 methods of pressure release.
Yes,
We'll do that.
totally.
We'll do
Which is
that
what
some
we
other
were
time.
going to talk about. So yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, soon, because why
Soon.
not?
Why
Who
not?
doesn't want to listen to podcasts right now? It's a perfect way to spend some time. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah, good,
Sure.
good, good. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks so much again, Alexa.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise.
And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. I hope that gave you some ideas and some resources as we talked about. And yeah, looking forward to hearing how it's feeling for you. You can always reach out. So, Sarah, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, best ways are through my website. So sarahschlote.com, SarahSchlote.com. sarahschlote.com. Actually, I had been reclaiming the official German pronunciation of my name, so
Yeah.
sarahschlote.com. So
Schlote. I like it. Okay.
schlote.com, schlote.com. And because, yeah, that's the whole German shame, World War II cultural
Right.
trauma stuff, right?
Totally.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll remember that for next time.
Yeah, Sarah
That's great.
Schlote.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's French. We speak French. We lost the German language as
Yep.
of World War II, like a
Yep.
lot of, partially or fully German individuals who lived outside of Germany.
Yep.
So that was half of my family's story. We kept the French. French was not really a problem,
Yep.
but we lost the German. So I'm reclaiming that. And then the other website, of course, is equusoma.com, equusoma.com. And you can reach me through either of those. There's also Facebook. We've got an EQUUSOMA Facebook page, an
Yep.
EQUUSOMA Facebook group, and you can grab me through Messenger there as well.
Fantastic. Lots of ways to get in touch. And for me, if you ever want to reach out, I'm an email away. No admin assistance over here. It's just me and Solo, my chihuahua. So it's alexa@alexalinton.com. If you ever have a question or comment, I also get some great emails suggesting different guests and different ideas for podcasts. I love to hear about it. So
Cool.
let me know. All right. Great, great. All right, everybody. Take real good care out there and good care of your nervous systems and yourselves. And we'll see you next time. I wanted to share a little of what I'm up to and my offerings right now, especially in this challenging time. On Wednesday mornings, 9:30 Pacific, I'm offering a free remote session to clients, community, podcast listeners, and beyond, and would love to see you there. It's a 45-minute session, and we go into a lot of the things we talk about in the podcast, and you also get to experience my energy medicine work, which is pretty exciting. I've included the link down below at wholehorse.ca under the episode that you're watching. As well, I offer remote sessions for you and your horses and the rest of your herd. They're energy medicine sessions. They're very powerful. And I've been doing remote sessions for, almost 15 years now. And I absolutely love them. I find them so effective. So if that's something you're wanting to try, you can always email me at alexa@alexalinton.com to set up a session.